Now we're ready to manage our app in the App Store. We've already archived it and uploaded it, and we want to get it right into this store and manage its presence in the App Store. And we use iTunes Connect. iTunes Connect is a group of web-based tools that enables developers to submit apps to the App Store and manage their apps in the store. It's actually the very same set of tools that the other content providers, the music and video types, that they use to get their content into iTunes. In iTunes Connect, you can view your legal contracts, manage your users, that is, your development team. You can submit your app with all its supporting documentation, and most importantly, you submit your metadata. iTunes Connect is also where you get your financial reports and your daily, weekly sales trend data. As I showed you before, if you were at the iPhone Developer Center or the iOS Provisioning Portal, you would get to the iTunes Connect by clicking the Member Center and then choosing iTunes Connect right here. Well, of course, you need your Apple ID and password in order to log into it. But this iTunes Connect main page is really like your control panel for what you can do in the App Store. For example, you can manage the users on your development team by clicking here. You can create and edit an iTunes Connect user account here or a test user, and you can define user roles and notifications, which are the type of emails your fellow team members receive regarding the main iTunes Connect account. And you can go back here with this button. You'll also manage your contracts and tax and banking information here. Here is where you complete the paid application agreements and provide financial information related to payment as well as tax withholdings from the sale of your apps. If you plan on selling your app, you need to have your paid commercial agreement in place and signed before your app can be posted to the App Store. And you would click Done when you were finished doing that, and you would use these links to manage your applications and manage in-app purchases in your app. So after uploading your application archive, you can click the Manage Your Applications link here to call up the Manage Your Applications page. On that page, you can click your new app's icon to manage it. In my case here, I have an app called Tony's Tips for iPhone users, and I can click on that and set up all kinds of things here with the rights and the pricing, manage in-app purchases, manage Game Center usage, or set up the iAd network. I can also view the details of my app here by clicking there, and you see that I have version information. I can manage localizations. I can add promo codes for editors to review the app. And here I have the most important information, what's called the metadata. The metadata is the ever-present data about the data, and you have to provide all of the information. Let's go over it. The metadata is extremely important. It's how people will find your app and the category that your app will fall into, and it also includes the artwork you need for the App Store. Now, the application name, you need to use no more than 35 characters, and it must conform to guidelines for using Apple and all other trademarks and copyrights. Apple takes this very seriously. They will, in fact, not allow any app that sounds or has any kind of trademark infringement implied by the name. The SKU, or Stock Keeping Unit number, is any alphanumeric sequence of letters and numbers that uniquely identifies your app in the system. And once you create one, you can't edit it after you've submitted it. The bundle identifier, or bundle ID, is used by iOS to recognize future updates to your app. And you choose it from a pop-up menu. The bundle identifier is put together automatically when you submit your app. The rights, pricing, and availability include selecting the territories in which you would like to make your app available and the date that you want your app to go live on the App Store. By default, the app will be available in all countries the App Store currently supports, unless you specifically select individual countries or stores. You also set the pricing tier, unless your app is free. Apple provides a pricing matrix link to show the pricing tiers in more detail. You can even set a discount for educational institutions option if you want your app to be eligible for education discount pricing when educators purchase multiple copies at once. The version number should start with 1.0. Then, as you update the app to respond to suggestions and constructive criticism, you can move on to 1.1 and someday even version 2.0. In any case, the version numbering is up to you. Your description should be no more than 4,000 characters. Apple suggests actually no more than 580 characters so that customers can view your entire iTunes Connect app description without clicking the More button in the App Store. But anyway, this description is what users will see when they click your app in the App Store, and it's important that this description is well written and points out your app's key features. But whatever you do, don't include HTML tags, which are stripped out anyway when the data is uploaded. The categories include the primary category, the secondary category. Apple offers you a drop-down menu with the primary category choices for your app, and you choose one, and this is the most important category. The App Store offers at least 20 categories ranging from reference to games to social networking to travel to utility and so on. Apple also offers a drop-down menu for what's called the secondary category. Now, the choices for the secondary category are the same as those you see for the primary category, but you're supposed to choose one that makes sense for searching for your app, so that when a user searches in the store for the secondary category, the results will include your app. You can't choose the same category for both primary and secondary. Now, if you choose game as a primary category, you then also get to choose a subcategory for the game, such as action, arcade, educational, and so on. You also supply keywords when you submit your app. Keywords help people find your app in the store through searches. They can be single words or phrases. However, the text field is limited to 100 characters. You better spend some time on this. You can't change keywords until you submit a new version of your app or if the app status is rejected. Keywords must be related to your app content. You can't use other app names, company names, or trademark terms as keywords or any kind of offensive language. Your app name and company are already searchable, so you don't need to include them in your keywords list. Next, you have the copyright. You need to provide the name of the person or entity that owns the exclusive rights to the app. For example, you would enter 2011 and your name. You don't enter a copyright symbol. Apple takes care of presenting the copyright symbol correctly in the App Store. You also supply a contact email address. This is for use by Apple only, not visible to the end users of your app. The address is likely to be one you used when you registered for the developer program. You also supply both a support URL and an app URL. The support URL appears on the app product page at the App Store. The support URL should be the link that users click if they need actual technical support from you or have a question about your app. Your support URL must lead to a page with actual contact information for support. But for your app URL, you can provide a product page or a company page. The idea is that people would click on the app URL to find out more about the product or more about your company. After you've assigned these URLs, you want to keep it the same as long as possible because people bookmark them, although you can always use a redirect in your web page to direct them to another page if necessary. In addition, you provide some review notes. This is a text field visible only to the app review team, so the information entered into this field will not appear in the App Store. You would use this field, the review notes field, to provide demo account information that the App Store reviewers can use to test your app. The reviewers need to get into your app and test it and use every feature, and that includes if they have to log into something, you have to provide them with a username, password, an access code, a demo data, the URL for more data, and so on. If your app delivers streaming video over the cellular network, you need to provide a test stream URL as well. It should also include any messages to the app reviewers in case they might incorrectly reject something. For example, they might wrongly assume that you don't have permission to use a piece of music in the app, when in fact the piece is yours or in the public domain. Make sure that the demo account works correctly and that your information is correct. You'd hate to have your app rejected because you didn't pay attention to setting up a demo account correctly. Apple also asks you to provide additional information describing the content. This allows you to set your rating for your app for the purpose of parental controls in the App Store. You may see content types such as cartoon or fantasy violence, simulated gambling, mature suggestive themes, and so on. And for each type of content, you need to describe the level of frequency for that content, such as none, infrequent or mild, frequent or intense. Apple has strict rules stating that an app must not contain any obscene, pornographic, or offensive content. Oh, and by the way, it's entirely up to Apple what is to be considered offensive or inappropriate. Finally, in the legal department, we have the EULA, or End User License Agreement. This is optional. If you don't know what it is, don't worry. It's the legal document that spells out to your app's users what they're agreeing to do to use your app. Fortunately, the iTunes Store has a standard agreement, which has been time-tested. You can add an additional EULA if you want to go beyond Apple's agreement, and you can even select the countries in which your additional EULA should be applied. But most app developers don't need to do that. If you use additional languages besides English for your metadata, you can offer a localization. For example, you could have all your text and images in Italian for Italian-speaking stores. Now, the artwork is very important. A picture is worth 1,000 words, so the App Store gives you the opportunity to dazzle your app's potential users with some nice imagery. Your home screen icons and app launch images, and your large application icon, which is the 512 by 512 pixel version. Again, a flattened square image. You can also provide a primary screenshot. The primary screenshot appears on your app product page in the App Store. In fact, you can provide up to 4 additional screenshots on the product page in the App Store. To take a screenshot on an iPad, iPhone, or iPod Touch, quickly press and release the sleep wake button and the home button at the same time. The screen flashes, and if your volume is up, you hear a shutter click. This indicates that the screen was saved in the Saved Images album on an iPad, or in the Camera Roll album on an iPhone or iPod Touch. You can choose the album in the Photos app to see the images, and you can take as many screenshots as you like. And the next time that you sync your iPad, iPhone, or iPod Touch, your photo app, such as iPhoto, launches to receive these new images. You can then use an image editing program, such as iPhoto or Photoshop, to crop the image and exclude the status bar. Apple does like it if you do take out the status bar, although I do believe it's optional. Apple is very strict about the App Store. Before you upload your app and its data, make sure that you haven't run afoul of any of Apple's rules about trademarks, copyrights, and artwork. For example, in the graphics rules, you need to use the same image for the app's icon and the App Store page icon. If it's not the same, it has to be extremely similar, nearly identical. You can use a higher resolution version with more detail for your App Store page icon, but it must look nearly identical to the one that appears on the iPhone home screen or the iPad home screen. Now remember, app icons must be different if you offer both a free and a paid version. The free could be called a light version, the paid could be called a pro version, but whatever. For a light version, the app and page icon images must be different from the ones you use for the pro or paid version. Using the same icon image for both sends your app straight to the rejection bin. Finally, don't use any part of an Apple image, and certainly none of the company's trademark images or names. Your app can't include any photos or illustrations of the iPhone or iPad. It can't use any icons that resemble the iPhone or any other Apple products. It can't really use iPhone or iPad in the title either, although I got away with it with Tony's tips for iPhone users because the app's content is really about the iPhone. And of course, don't infringe on trademarks either. Now, there are a lot of reasons why an app could get rejected. The majority of the reasons, though, are that the app doesn't work as advertised by the developer, or the app downloads or installs executable code, which is code that can run immediately on the processor, or interpreted code, which is code that can be translated to run on the processor. And either way, Apple can't review that code to make sure it doesn't do improper things. So, whoops, out you go. Now, of course, you can't copy Apple's functionality directly. You can't just do a knockoff of the Safari browser, for example. You can't stray too far from Apple's guidelines in your design. And if the app crashes, forget about it. Of course, some apps have also been rejected for pornographic images, and some are rejected for being too similar to Apple's own apps. And some fall into a gray area that Apple hasn't anticipated. For instance, apps that help people cheat at gambling in casinos. Now remember the development rules. Don't use downloadable and installed executable or interpreted code. Follow Apple's guidelines and warn the user of a lost internet connection. That helps immensely get the app through the process. So do the marketing rules. Use in-app purchases for subscriptions, if you offer subscriptions. Your keywords must be related to the app's content. Keyword terms must be obviously related. You can't use offensive terms either, and it's a big no-no to refer to other apps in your competition. And of course, your free app must be fully functional, not a crippled version of the paid app. Avoid those stupid app tricks as well. Don't misuse the vibrate feature. Don't try to fool the ratings. They will catch you. Don't infringe on trademarks. And what's more is don't mention Steve. That's Steve Jobs. Apple will reject any app that mentions Steve Jobs in any context, even as a clue in a puzzle. Doesn't matter how trivial the reference, just the name is enough. Now, I happen to be able to get away with it, but you won't be able to get away with it. So leave Steve out of it. Well, so now what? Well, you wait for your app's approval or rejection, but you bask in the glory that you have reached the final frontier, that you are an app developer for iOS. And if everything you did is copacetic with Apple, and you followed my advice about submitting your app should be ready and in the App Store in about a week or two, and you'll be ready to cash in as an iPhone and iPad developer. Good luck.